You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, hello again, everyone. It's early in 2025. I hope your new year is off to a great start. This is Doug Thorpe and another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. We're going to kick off part of the new year with a theme about being able to grow and scale businesses. That's a common thing that people struggle with doing. And no, we're not here to sell you a sales program. We're here to talk about challenges and experiences that have been overcome by those who have gone before you. My guest today is a person who does just that with entrepreneurs and business owners. His name is John Burdett. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Doug, so much for having me.
Yeah, so you've got your logo going on there. Tell everybody the name of the company and the nature of the business.
Yeah, so I started a company called Fast Slow Motion 11 years ago. So we just turned 11, and I started it to help other people grow and scale their business the right way using good systems and processes. Basically, just helping them not make all the mistakes that I'd made in myself growing other businesses. And so we do that by implementing scalable CRM platforms like Salesforce and HubSpot to put all those systems and processes and data in one place so that you can focus on growing your businesses and not all the mundane things that are necessary to grow that business.
So I'm going to say the name again, Fast Slow Motion. Where did that inspiration come from?
Yeah, there's really two backstories to it. About 15 years ago, I walked into the kitchen one day and my son was maybe 10 years old or so, a little older, maybe. He just threw a ball at me out of the blue and I just reacted and caught it. And he was like, "Dad, that was cool. That was like fast, slow motion." And I was like, "That's a cool little phrase, buddy." So I went and like any entrepreneur and nowadays, especially if you hear a good phrase or whatever, you write it down and go see if the domain's available. So I bought the domain back then. And when I was looking to start this business, that one always just resonated with me. But what it really means is like any prime athlete or anybody that does something really well, maybe a musician, an artist or whatever, they are able to move very, very quickly because they took the time to put good systems and processes in place, stay disciplined to the little things. And so the world moves slow to them and it moves fast to their competition. So like a Major League Baseball player hitting a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, to that person, it looks like a grapefruit. To me, it looks like a BB. I barely even see it coming by because he's prepared, he's done the work, and he's put the right systems in place to be successful. And I think that same thing applies to the business world. If you'll slow down and codify your processes and systems, you're able to automate those. You're able to be reactive instead of, able to be proactive instead of reactive, and be intentional about growing your business instead of just reacting and everything's chaotic.
I love that. And it is a great phrase, and you do hear it often. If you're a sports junkie like I am, you particularly in football, the commentators always talk about, well, the game is slowed down for him, or
Yeah.
We heard it with Michael Jordan's famous basketball career that, to him, the game was just really slow. He could see where he needed to go and where he needed to dish the ball, but for others, it was chaos spinning. So great idea, great concept. So let's talk a little more. Well, first, let me ask about your own experience. You alluded to some mistakes you made along the way. Give us the Cliff Note version of what was that about?
Yeah, I kind of fell into entrepreneurship. I knew I didn't really want to be a corporate kind of person. I just don't enjoy bureaucracy and things of that nature. But I came out of computer science school, and one of my professors had started a company, and he was like, "Why don't you join me here?" And they were about a few years into it, had about 15 people. And so I joined as a software engineer, writing custom code for large organizations, because back in the day, that's what you did. Everybody built things from scratch. And I just had the honor and pleasure and the opportunity to help grow and scale that business. And so by the time I left, I had about 120, 150 people reporting to me. and I was in my mid-20s. And so through that experience, I made a ton of mistakes because I had no idea what I was doing. I was just working hard, putting in a lot of effort. And I was like, man, there's got to be a better way. And I was like, well, maybe I'm not called to be a services person. Let me try products. So I left to go help grow a product company, a software product company. And what I learned is the grass isn't greener on the other side. The challenges are just different and everything like that. And through that second business, we had implemented Salesforce to really run our behind the scenes operations. And being a former software developer, I was like, wow, this is super powerful because I don't have to devote a ton of expensive programmers to build these internal systems. I can configure it myself and get it running, and gives me a really scalable platform. And from that, I was able to codify our business processes. As an entrepreneur, you're the first of everything. So you're the first support person, first salesperson, whatever. So I was able to codify what I was doing and then onboard people the right way. And we just saw the power of that. To give you an example, when we sold the business, we had one accountant, and we were ACHing millions of dollars every week from all these different parties as we were doing our software product. The company we sold it to had 25 accountants, and they weren't 25 times the size of us. They were maybe a factor of 3 or 4. And so we had really optimized our business for efficiency, and the green light kind of went off as like, wow, you can really scale a business the right way nowadays, and it's cost effective, and you can do it the right way and not make all the mistakes I'd made trying to do it myself or just reacting to what's all going on.
You said a number of things there that I think we ought to unpack and take care of. There, one is the buy it, not build it. If you're an owner thinking about systems, I don't know, kind of from where I sit and experience I've had, I think the lure of going out and independently contracting a development effort is probably waning a little bit. I mean, I know there are people that are still doing it, and no disrespect to my friends who are coders that are still out there trying to make a living doing it. But independently, and particularly for the small to mid-sized company, the cost of doing that, especially if you try to do it domestically in the U.S., is just pretty much off the chart. I mean, there are places that are doing great work, but to your point, some of the more established platforms like a Salesforce or a HubSpot, and there are others, of course, that are out there with a whole cottage industry of consultants and specialists that can help implement and fast track your process. So that's the other side of that coin. If you are a business owner, you don't have to do it alone. You can find someone to bring in temporarily, help configure and work through things. But that leads us immediately to the second big challenge, and that is, do you know what your process is? Mm-hmm. And for companies that have sales efforts, do you know what your sales process is? Most don't. Or operationally, do you know what your fulfillment process is? If you get an order from a customer, do you know how you process it to fulfill it and get it delivered?
Yeah, what I tell everybody is like, you start a business on heroes. It's the only way to really start one. You've got to wear multiple hats and figure things out. Once you start figuring things out, meaning you have a product or a service that the market's willing to pay for, and you're able to start growing that business from there, your mindset really has to switch to like, how do I scale this? So how do I make this repeatable as I continue to enjoy life? So one of my passions is to help business leaders grow and scale their business the right way so they can enjoy life. Life is fully integrated. And so many of us sacrifice really important things in life to grow our business. And that's not sustainable, and that's not a wise decision. I'm pretty sure on everybody's deathbed, they're going to have a lot of regrets if they end up making that. But as the business leader or the entrepreneur, you have to hit that inflection point where your mindset shifts to, the way I win is by putting good processes and systems in place and empowering, enabling others to execute on those processes and systems. And that is the secret sauce of how you really grow and scale a business. And honestly, you got to have the mindset, like, if I can't figure this out, it's not worth it, because you'll end up building what I call a prison. It's this great thing that you've created, but you're so trapped in it and there's no way out. And the pressures only escalate the more people you have, the more customers you have, the more revenue you have, all that kind of stuff. So really, it all starts with us as the business leader to kind of have that mindset shift and kind of change the game in your head to, like, this is how I really win.
Yeah. Well, I know I've had that experience likewise in my earlier years in entrepreneurship. I had what I thought was a great service offering. It certainly made a lot of sense on paper, and you could easily pitch the case for using the service. But as we got started, and we did build a customer base and had some things going, but ultimately the market wasn't really ready to embrace what we were doing, because in my situation, it was an outsourcing play with outsourced services of back office oriented things that we were doing domestically. None of my work was offshore, but business owners who were the probable prospects to use my service didn't really like giving up that part of their process that I was saying, I can do for you. I can do it at scale. I can do it cheaper. I can do it more effective. It becomes a fixed cost to you, not a variable cost. I'm sorry, becomes a variable cost depending on your volume, not a fixed cost. And that's where the paper analysis kicked in, and you could show millions of dollars of savings to institutions that were using our service. But somewhere at the end of the day, nobody liked giving up control over that cog in the wheel. And that was despite bona fide results that we were getting for them. It just, people tried it a while and then they pulled out and left. And we were constantly chasing new clients. And finally, I considered a divine intervention. The crash of '08 happened, and my business was collateral damage to that crash, and was able to gracefully walk away from it. But it was a lesson learned. It's funny you bring that up.
What I try to tell people is, like, get to that point as fast as possible. And so, customers actually vote with their dollars, and you could have it sounds like you had an awesome idea. The ROI was there. It all made sense on paper, but the market didn't adopt it. And that happens all the time. And it doesn't mean your business idea was bad or anything like that. It's just maybe the market wasn't ready, whatever. But you need to get to that point as quickly as possible so that you're not wasting your time and your life with something that's not going to work. But once you do get to what I call the I made it level, meaning I have real customers now, I have real employees, I have real problems, I have a activity going on that I can then scale. You got to have that mindset switch to, like, okay, I got to figure out how to do this so I'm not involved in every single part of this business. And as you mentioned earlier, I totally agree. Unless you're a software-based company building software as your product, you shouldn't invest and you're building your own technology or hiring a bunch of technologists. We're expensive, hard to manage kind of people. We get bored easily. That we can always make more money elsewhere. You're going to just be extremely frustrated. You need to focus on what you know and your business value proposition to the market, and let this technology enable you. And that's the beautiful thing about today's marketplace. You don't have to have millions of dollars in revenue to be able to afford these platforms. You can buy them very inexpensively and start building that foundation that'll scale your business. And the beautiful thing about that is you'll never outscale these platforms. You will never get big enough where you're like, this doesn't work for me anymore. And so that's why we only implement Salesforce and HubSpot, because they will infinitely scale with your business so you can stay focused on what really matters.
Yeah. Well, I do agree with you. And again, we're speaking mainly to the, privately held independent owners out there. And I know in larger corporations, they often have legacy systems that are at play and things they're doing. But even Fortune 500 is using Salesforce and HubSpot, and they're to your point, they're doing quite well with it. Well, John, let me. You mentioned a couple of other magic words that I really value, and I use it a lot in my work with clients. One was intentional, being able to be intentional with your process design, your delivery effort. Talk to us more about that idea as you see it.
Yeah, from my own experience, I was kind of, as I was helping grow businesses, I kind of meandered a lot. I was working really hard. Nobody was outworking me, and we were having a lot of success, but I wasn't intentional about where I wanted to end up. We're all going to end up somewhere. Very few end up on their own purpose. And so I had this aha moment of around, well, crap, I need to be thinking about where I want to go and where I want this business to go, and not just react and meander and be scrappy. And I think it's a blessing that a lot of us entrepreneurs and business leaders are scrappy. We're competitive, we got grit, all those kinds of things. Those are great attributes. But if you're trying to win at the wrong game or hit the wrong bullseye, you're going to lose in the end. And that kind of fuels my passion to help other business leaders to say, no, define who you want to be, define your why, and then let's align your systems and processes to fulfill that mission. And we'll verify and validate you can make money doing it. Because if you're not making money doing what you're doing, you're going to go out of business. It sounds very simple, but that's why businesses go out of business. They stop making enough cash flow to support the business. And they if you're not doing that, it's not going to be around long term. So we're much more intentionality to me is around, okay, begin with the end in mind. Stephen Covey taught us, and then align those processes to get there and just be consistent. So you don't have to be right all the time. You don't have to be perfect. You need to be consistent so that you know why you're winning and why you're losing. And then you know what to fix. Because a lot of times we've got so many variables in play, and there's a lot of chaos, and we just, we're playing whack-a-mole with the problem of the day kind of thing, instead of saying, okay, here's where we're going, here's what we're going to do. So I try to boil it down to simplicity of like, okay, just start putting basic processes in place and start executing on those consistently, and then measure the results, and then just iterate on that over time. And what you'll find over time, you start buying yourself margin. You have time to think again. You have time to be intentional, because when you're just reacting, it's a tough game to play.
Right. Well, and there's so many other facets of that as a smaller business owner and even mid-sized businesses. If you can't be intentional about how you're going to operate and deliver, you're likely never going to be scalable, because it'll be capped by the resources that are able to react to each request that comes in. And you can't hire enough people to do that and build custom solutions every order.
That's right. And you miss out on the blessing of really building leaders, because one of the biggest blessings I've had at Fast Motion is to watch my team do things way better than I ever could. And just to get out of the way and empower them to improve our processes, deliver better customer service, make wiser decisions. And it creates this nice little flywheel where your business is kind of running itself, and you look like a genius, which I'm not a genius and not even close to that, but you look like a genius because your team is executing so well and taking that ball and running it to a different level. And that's one of the biggest, once again, blessings as a business leader, I think there is. Yeah, you want to be successful, make a lot of money, support families, all those kinds of things. But seeing your team do things so well, and you didn't have anything to do with it, that's a beautiful moment when that happens.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in the phrase that, good managers and okay leaders get things done, but great leaders build other leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's such a critical differentiator in where you think you're going with your own mindset and leadership. Right. And speaking of, many times it is written, and I certainly speak about it and coach on it, and that is that what you're going to do as an owner of a business or a leader in a business is very dependent on your initial mindset. How do you think about the people around you? How do you think about the business at hand? And if you're some kind of control freak, picture the hourglass. There's a little tiny pinch in the middle where the sand drips through, and you become that squeeze in the middle. If your mindset is centered on that, I've got to touch everything, I have to review everything, I have to control everything.
And it's hell on earth. I mean, it's a miserable place to be. And the other side is so fulfilling, but that side, and once again, I've been there, and you feel like you're just losing all the time. You're dealing with upset customers, you're dealing with upset employees, and you're not a good father at home or wife at home. Yeah, all these kinds of things, because you're just dealing with the crap that escalates up instead of kind of flipping that on its head. At Fast Foot Motion, we call it the 3 Ps. We think when you're developing your core principles, you need to have 3 core principles at least. You don't want to have more than maybe 5, but align to the 3 Ps. So it's purpose. You need to align. What is your why? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? What's transcendent above where you are today? Because if there's not something bigger than that, you're gonna stop doing it, because the money will only get you so far and all that kind of stuff. You can only have so many trophies. You got to be doing something bigger. But the second P is people. And one thing I've learned is, and honestly, and this is in life and in business and everything that we do, is people they're the only thing that really matters at the end of the day. And if we're not building a fulfilling culture for our team to thrive and enjoy what they're doing, we're going to lose, because those people are going to create more problems than the opposite of actually building leaders. And then the final thing, and it sounds simplistic, but most people forget about this one, is you got to be making a profit. You got to make sure your business is making money so that you can fulfill that purpose, take care of those great people, and stay around long term. And if you kind of distill it down to those 3 Ps, you can then define your core principles, and then once again align your processes to support those, to make sure you get what the outcomes that you're wanting.
I like that. Well, let me ask you this, John. When a new client shows up on your doorstep, let me ask first, what are some of the classic symptoms or, excuse me, problems that they're explaining to you when they show up?
Yeah, so we primarily work in the CRM world, and we can talk about what that really means in today's world and in just a minute. But most people are coming to us with an inconsistent, unpredictable sales process. They've built their business on heroes, like I said before. They're running their sales processes off spreadsheets and Post-it notes, or they have a CRM and they're not really utilizing it for what it needs to be. And, if sales is broken, it trickles down to everything else. And so getting kind of sales fixed, and what I mean by that is just getting consistent. Know why you're winning, why you're losing. How can you onboard new team members to follow the playbooks that you have, not be so reliant on this one, hero that's generating so much revenue, because eventually that person will leave, that kind of thing. And so we usually get that house in order first. And once that's in order, we're able to then work on, project management, account management, customer support, all these other things that kind of flow through that. But to be honest with you, we do have people coming to us with different problems other than sales, and we'll kind of focus on that, get them healthy in that area, and then move outward from there to get them going. But the main thing we do is we don't try to boil the ocean. We try to simplify things and get a win in 4 to 6 weeks, and get them seeing the value of what will happen when they get organized and have good systems and processes in place, and that software is configured to run their business, that they are like, holy crap, I can see how this works now. So that's typically how we like to engage. We want to earn trust, get some value in there, and then hopefully they want to stay with us forever.
Well, let me fast forward a little bit. So you get a system tied in for them. You get them, everybody trained and up and running. How do you typically address performance indicators? Do you have a strategy that you classically encourage people to consider?
Yeah, so we are business consultants and technology consultants combined. There's not one like standard sales playbook or support playbook that we necessarily represent. A lot of times our clients will have some of that they like or whatever. What we try to do is just put best practice in and get visibility into that business. And then from that, based on their industry, surface up the key metrics just to once again, hopefully identify early leading indicators that's going to help them drive their business looking through the windshield instead of the rearview mirror so they can start making wise decisions and know, you can only control the inputs, not the outputs. And so we focus a lot on capturing the right inputs and being very consistent in that. And then allowing us to look at the outputs and making sure we're getting the results from that and just iterate on it. But we're not, we're not coming in with like, oh, this is the way you do this for every business kind of thing. We're kind of looking at that industry, looking at their culture, and then getting some of those core disciplines in place. We're the offensive line. We're blocking and making sure the quarterback has time to throw the ball. We're not trying to come in with this sexy, like new evolved playbook that, and because we think the game's won at the line of scrimmage, not with the skill players. You need good skill players, but if the line's not blocking, it doesn't matter how great they are, right? And so that's really where we fit in.
Right. Well, you said something else that has been a kind of a keen theme of late for me, and that is the difference between looking at leading indicators versus lagging indicators. Mm-hmm. And what I see in deployment when people try to turn on dashboards and score sheets for their business, it's usually chock full with lagging indicators. What was our volume last month or last quarter? How many, in the case of sales, how many appointments did we have? What was our percentage win rate? And all of that is lagging data. Mm-hmm. And not bad to have. I mean, you do need to calculate and declare your earnings, and all of that is a lagging indicator. I mean, when you close out the books at month end, guess what? The month is over. So that's if you're looking at the numbers, you're looking at history. Mm-hmm. So what do you think of when you tell a client about let's look at leading indicators? Where do you typically guide them?
Yeah, we kind of deconstruct. All right, here's the outcomes that we want. What activities and what things do we need to do to get there? And if we do those things consistently and we measure those, we should be able to predict the future. Now, that's an iterative process, and I highly recommend don't over-engineer that because it's hard when you're starting it. It gets easier as your business matures and you've been doing this for a while because you've iterated on it for multiple years. But yeah, just like you said, I'm a big fan of like, all right, figure out the inputs that's going to produce the outputs, and then just build those processes in and capture that data. And I pay much more attention to those dashboards, as you said, than the lagging indicators, because I know what I'm looking for really between the leading indicators and the lagging indicators is alignment and predictability. And if I can do this, I know I'm going to get that. And if I'm not getting this, I need to be prepared for some bad results coming as well, which allows me to be once more intentional and proactive rather than reactive. And so a lot of times, like let's just take sales, it's so much more around, okay, what is your ideal customer profile? How is your team scoring that customer within your CRM to measure that as quickly as possible? And then making sure your sales team is devoting most of their time to the opportunities where it aligns with the ideal customer profile. Yeah, and they're not wasting their time with everybody else. You can't treat everybody the same. A lot of times we try to do that and it's a failure. You end up not serving the right clients, and not every client should be served the same way. So giving the sales team the freedom to say, okay, that one's not a good fit. I'm going to focus more of my time here and just measure that. And those are the dashboards that they look at. And then making sure you have the other thing I would say that's really important is like every function of your business should have key leading indicators that they know that's on their homepage that they're measuring every day. And frankly, they're comped on. That's how their compensations align. So, if I know I get X number of leads, I'm going to get X number of qualified opportunities. I'm going to get X number of wins, which means I'll get X number of customers and so on and so forth. Those marketing people or the people in the front of that funnel, they need to be comped on getting the X number of qualified leads. And that's where they're focused. And that's their leading indicator to know if we're going to get qualified opportunities. And it just gives you a freedom to kind of operate your business, kind of knowing what's going to happen versus just, like you said, running the reports 10 days after the month and seeing where we ended up. It should never be a surprise. You should have been knowing the whole time.
Yeah. Well, and everything you said, I think is directly tied to a fairly simple concept. And that is, if you're the owner or the leader in the business and you're thinking about some growth target, let's say 24 months from now, where would you like to see the company? If you say, I want to double our topside revenue and improve our margin by 5%. Okay, those are two pretty specific goals that can be tracked and calculated. But the whole idea is, all right, if you set that goal out there at the 2-year mark, now solve backwards for 24 months. What do you need to do every month to get there? Where does it start? Where are you today? How much incrementally do you need to do each month or each quarter to hit that goal? Because you can't let 23 months burn off and now you're at month 24 and you're nowhere close to your goal. Yeah. You can't just, throw that down. So the idea of pairing off with vision, goals, and planning to determine what those leading indicators need to be telling you. On one hand, again, it's pretty simple to put together on paper. You can map it out, you can quantify it, you can measure it. But now you got to turn that into an operational delivery and execution. Mm-hmm. And that is obviously where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, it's very much a process, not a project. You're never going to arrive. You're never going to have it all figured out. And a lot of times we get an analysis paralysis is because they're like, I don't even know where to start. Well, just deconstruct it a little bit, start doing a little things consistently, start measuring that and see where you're trending. And then you get more complicated as you evolve and the business can actually support it. But keeping that simple is one of the main things I always tell people is like, don't come up with 50 things you want to track. Start with 5 and start tracking those to see if those are going to produce the right outcomes that you want. And then you start iterating on that. And that's why these platforms, these CRM platforms are so beneficial is I'm able to track and measure my data. I have visibility into what's going on in my business so that I'm not relying on hope or luck or any of these other things that we tend to kind of our intuition, our gut. Those things are important, but you overlay that with real data because you have to face reality and understand what's actually going on and then use your mental intuition and gut to make that better and not ignore the reality of what's happening within a business. So it's a beautiful thing as you start doing that. And you're just so surprised at how much freedom you start having as a business leader because you're able to think more. Most business leaders don't think enough. They're executing and reacting all the time.
Yeah. Well, as you were describing that and everything we've said up to this point, I'm reminded of a person I know who bought a plumbing business in Florida and coming up on about a 2-year anniversary of that acquisition, but immediately started really leaning into process and how they were doing things. And when you think of a service-based business, and this is predominantly residential, although they do have a commercial team as well, but predominantly residential. So you think, well, this is mostly break fix and a little bit of upgrade, remodel, and installation from time to time. But on one hand, you could look at a business like that and say, well, that's not a standard delivery. So, every job has to be custom. Well, not so fast.
That's right.
How do you effectively deliver? Well, number one, what is your load balance? What kind of parts are you going to put on everybody's truck? Because they don't necessarily know what they're walking into. What's the probability of needing a certain number of fixtures and fittings and pieces that go into it. And the interesting thing is, over time, you can, if you're tracking it well, you get a very clear picture of common demand.
That's right.
And it does all of a sudden become standard. And just not to belabor it, but give you one quick example of what this guy did with his business. He said, you know what? When a homeowner calls me and says, I think I want to replace my toilet, what he's done, he set up 3 packages. You got the baseline, the economic, good, good, good equipment, but not real expensive, with a standard labor charge on top of it.
Yeah.
Then you got a little bit of an upgrade, a little fancier, a little more, function to it. And then you got sort of the gold standard. So you got 3 flavors you can pick from. And what he's done with his business is those are the 3 price points. There's no variability in it. There's no, and yes, on some jobs, his tech has to stay there a little longer because they run into a few other things. But in his mind, big picture, it doesn't matter. It'll all average out, because guess what? On other jobs, it's going to be a slam bam, so easy. Yeah. But here's your price point. We agreed up front. That's what your deal. And that even ties back to your customer qualification things. Mm-hmm. If he gets a customer on the phone and says, well, I don't want to do it that way, I need to do it some other way, he says, you're not qualified.
That's right. Yeah. Let me recommend you to somebody else, kind of thing. Yeah, we do. I'm glad you brought. We work with a lot of home services companies and do a lot of field service implementations, and kind of going back to the power of the platform, you can do field service inside of these powerful platforms. So you have all your data in one place. It's not just sales and marketing. You run your entire business. But you take like a plumbing company, you mentioned, having the right inventory on the truck. Inventory is cash. Overstocking the truck costs you money. Understocking the truck costs you money. You also have different skill sets. Not everybody's a master plumber and they can only do certain things. And then you have the whole dispatch kind of aspect of it. Who's closest to the job? How do we optimize the routes to cover the most customers in a day? And so you're overlaying inventory, skill sets, availability, all these kinds of things. Having a system to be able to manage that and really optimize the routes and who does what. You're putting your best people on the highest grossing jobs, all this kind of stuff. Really transforms your business. So you're kind of playing a little video game with your business instead of, once again, reacting to the phone calls that come in on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve when there's a leak in the building, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, John, this has been great. I think we're about up on time for today, sir. But tell folks the best way to get a hold of you if they're interested in looking for more.
Yeah, thanks again, Doug, for having me on. And glad to help anybody. I'm really passionate about helping other people that have been in my shoes and are growing and scaling a business. You can check us out on the internet at fastflowmotion.com. All of our social channels are there. We have a podcast as well, so feel free to check that out if you're interested. And we kind of dive deep in some of these processes and systems that we do for clients so that you can learn a little bit more about that and hopefully share a little of the wisdom that we've gained over the years.
Well, that's great. Well, and as always, folks, we're going to have those links in the show notes so you can find John and his company, Fast Slow Motion. I love that phrase. Well, with this, we're going to wrap up. I do want to remind you to hop over to my website if you need other information about things I and my team might be able to do for you. I am offering a package deal that I'm calling Vision 25. It's kind of a quick hit 6-session coaching opportunity to do a quick dive in your business, give you an analysis and a little bit of a playbook that will get you fast tracked for the new year. Hop over there, dougthorpe.com/vision25. You'll learn more about that, and feel free to reach out to me if you need any other help and assistance. But for now, we're going to sign off, say goodbye. Go out there, make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.